We'll start working on the interface now. Firstly, I'm just going to change the title just to make sure that everything is working okay. And this application is going to be called Inquiries over here in the title bar. So that's what we're going to do. I think we're going to just get rid of this for the minute. For development, and if I just click and save and it's building my application, then you can see that immediately the changes that I've made have been reflected in the web browser here on port 8100. So that's really good. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to carry on with our development now. What I want to do is that on this home page, I want to show a list of all the inquiries that have been recorded in the system. And what we're going to have to do in order to prove our proof of principle is to hard code a set of inquiries which are a pattern for the data that we will use throughout the application. Hard coding, of course, is really useful for testing, but normally the data that would be displayed in a list like this would be drawn from a database or a server or an API somewhere that would serve up all the information we needed in order to make the list. Now, where the list is going to appear is here in home.ts. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the public access to this to private. I think that's important because it's important that we make sure that things can't be accessed outside of the application, especially when you're in this public mode of having to create things and test data to work with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put our list of inquiry objects in this spot here, inside an array of objects, and we're going to have a common data structure that I will show you in just a minute. Now, in the great scheme of things, what you can do is you can go to the Ionix docs page, and I've opened it here. You can go to components, and we can do lists, and we can copy lists out just like that. We could have a ready-made list. This one is set up for a login screen with a username and password, but let's hard code it. Let's do it from scratch so that you understand what it is that we're doing with our list. Let's remind ourselves of what data we need to work with. Remember, we're working with a company that rents out or sells camera equipment to professional photographers. So they need to record everything that the photographer submits in the field to make an inquiry about getting a new piece of equipment. And what we need to work with is the date, the name of the photographer, the type of equipment they're going to want to buy or rent, their budget for the particular item of equipment, and their phone number so that the expert in that field, if it's a camera, somebody can phone them. If it's a lens, somebody different would phone them to discuss their needs. So that's how it works. So we're going to set up what's called an array of data objects, and they're going to be placed just here above the constructor, as I've said. So inquiries is the name of the array, and we set up an array like that. And inside here we create our objects in a pattern which is inside the curly braces that you see here. So as I said, we're going to work with a date, but we're going to use a string for our date because a string is much easier to work with than a date object in JavaScript. Date objects in JavaScript get really tricky to use if you don't know exactly what you're doing. So we're going to put a format for the date that is uniform, and it's an international. It meets a standard that can be parsed and interpreted by different types of programs in different situations. So this date that I've just used is the 1st of September 2017, 2017-09-01. So year, month, date for that. So now we've got the name of the person who's making the inquiry, and that's going to be a string 2. So I'm going to have Bob Swaggart. And we're going to put the type of equipment that they want to be told about. So that's going to be a camera. and we're going to have a budget for the amount that they can afford, and this is just a number, so 1500 is there. And we're going to have a phone number, which once again of course would be a string, because it's dangerous to use number types in phones because they are frequently containing international characters and so forth that would represent something other than the number that you might think they would be. So let's do that first. So I've entered a phone number just here, which happens to be the college number. So what we're going to do now is we're going to copy this particular set of instructions, or sorry, data elements in our objects, and just list them. So now we just change the data. See, so that'd be Jim. Let me just do this and then I'll come back to you. So I've now set up 3 different items that we're eventually going to display in the browser as you see the application serve. So let's go back to here and just Control Save. And its build is finished, so that's successful, so we're okay, we're up to this point with our list of objects. What we'll do now is we'll display those objects on the home page. So let's move over to the HTML page of the data set that we've got in here. Now the home HTML is aware of the styles in the SCSS and the code which is set up in the TS, the TypeScript file. So we can use that data now that we created as the array of objects in our home.html file. So where we're going to put things is where this displays here, we want to create a list of our objects. Now the way I've got this my machine set up, I've got an extension for Visual Studio Code installed called Emmet, and Emmet's really good for setting up pre-structured code sets that you can just put in really easily with code shortcuts. Now we're going to build this list from scratch, and when I press tab I get that. So ion list, and then I'm going to have an ion item which is a part of a list. And in my item, I'm going to display the parts of this data that are in here. And we'll build this list progressively. But what we must do now is set up our ion item so that it refers to the model that's been created in the home.tss where our array of objects exist. And we use an ng, which is an Angular directive. Got for, and it equals, and here's the structure for doing this, let inquiry of inquiries, which is what we called our array in the TS file, inquiries. So it's going to get these as a looped item and go right through them and serve them up into the browser. So how we refer to the items in the list that we've got is through what's called string interpolation. Double curly braces, leave a space, and we've got inquiry dot name, which is one of the items in here. So get the name item here. So if I now Control S, there's all the names of the people immediately served up in our referred object which we created in home.ts. That's really quite powerful stuff, isn't it? Okay, so what we'll move on to now is to structure the rest of the data so that we have an agreed format here that will be the same format every time an item of data is displayed. That's what we'll do in the next video.